Instead of ECQ, which is the widespread highest form of quarantine classification, we will now do away with the ECQ and just impose granular lockdowns. But as to the MECQ, GCQ, and MGCQ, that has yet to be decided by the IATF. If the MECQ does not work, no, and it continues to increase, maybe we will defer implementation.
That was Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya confirming the country will now do away with imposing hard lockdowns in the form of ECQ. But he says other quarantine levels are still on the table even as government shifts to granular lockdowns.
The more localized lockdowns are expected to start either on September 8 or 13, just in time for the expiration of the year-long state of calamity declared last year. But with cases rising, Malaya says nothing is set in stone just yet. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. We begin tonight with the Interior Department saying that the use of granular lockdowns to combat the spread of COVID-19 may be implemented by mid-September.
But this may not be final yet, as this would depend on the country's vaccination and case numbers in the next few weeks. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the story.
Authorities have been planning a strategic shift from regional to granular lockdowns by mid-September. This means selected barangays, subdivisions, streets, and even specific buildings where COVID-19 is found to be raging will be sealed off and treated.
We will now do away with the ECQ and just impose granular lockdowns.
But that does not mean that quarantine restrictions will be lifted from the rest of the country. Malaya says the only thing the IATF is removing is the category of enhanced community quarantine. This means other regions and provinces could still be placed by the IATF under any of the quarantine levels.
But as to the MECQ, GCQ, and MGCQ, that has yet to be decided by the IATF.
As for the date of implementation, Malaya says they are looking at the first half of September. A lot would depend on the rate of vaccinations and the number of new COVID-19 cases in the next few weeks.
We are now confident that a lot of people can go out and do about their jobs so long as they practice the minimum health standards.
As of August 25, more than 30 million Filipinos have received the vaccines. But just this week, COVID-19 cases spiked by 20%, and the health department says expect new peaks of COVID cases in the following weeks. Malaya says should the situation get out of hand, the shift can be pushed to a later date.
If the MECQ does not work, no, and it continues to increase, maybe we will defer implementation.
Local governments have expressed concern about the granular lockdown, saying some LGUs may not be able to shoulder providing financial assistance. But Malaya says the cost of the granular lockdown will be split between the LGU and the national government 50-50. I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
To shed more light on the matter, we have with us live via Zoom Interior Undersecretary Martin Dino. Yusek Dino, welcome po to The Big Story.
Yeah, welcome. Good evening, Robbie, and of course, kay Gretchen at sa lahat ng nanonood ngayon sa buong Pilipinas. Magandang dito.
At Yusek, kung hindi na po natin pag-uusapan ng ECQ, more and more ang pag-uusapan natin granular lockdown. So this really shifts a lot of the burden, a lot of the responsibility and pressure on LGUs. Handa po ba ang mga LGUs? At saka pantay-pantay po ba ang implementation ng mga granular lockdown kung sakali?
Alam mo, Robin, hindi na bago sa amin yan sa barangay. As Undersecretary for Barangay Affairs, last year pa, yan na yung aming, ang tawag nga namin dyan, surgical lockdown. Ibig sabihin, kung saan lang yung merong mataas ng affected area, yun lang ang dapat namin isara para gumalaw ang ekonomiya sa ating bansa. Kung natatandaan nyo noon, yung unang salbo namin, supposed to be, pag halimbawa sa street na to, merong yung street lang ang ila-lockdown at yung street ang aayudahan ng todo. Buti man at ngayon, ganyan na yung ating gagawin. Dahil talagang mahihirapan ang ating bansa pagdating sa ekonomiya. At ang maganda ngayon, ang nangyayari ngayon, susubukan natin lahat ng paraan. Kamukha nito, sabi na nga ni Yusek Jonathan Malaya, hanggat tumataas ang naaapektuhan ng COVID-19, talagang titignan natin kung yung todo-todong pa yung granular lockdown, ano ibig sabihin niyan. Pagka ikaw ay nadeklara na yung barangay mo lockdown, as much as possible, no in, no out yan. At sabi nga kanina, kasama ko nga kanina si General Lielazar, na kung saan in-explain namin mabuti na kahit na naka-apor kayo, pagka work at home kayo, hindi kayo pwede lumabas ng bahay. Kaya nga work at home kayo, binabayaran kayo ng gobyerno na nandun lang kayo dapat sa bahay nyo at wala
Yusek,
kayong lumabas.
nabanggit nyo nga po, kung ano lang yung naka-lockdown, yun ang bubuhusan kanyo ng todo-todong doon tayo mag-aayuda. Yung ayuda po, na ipapasa rin po yan sa LGU. Yung LGU ba po ang bahala sa ayuda?
Hindi, kaya nga ang sinasabi ko sa iyo, nung last year pa, yan dapat ang yung ayuda pagdating sa pagkain, bigas, noodles, ang nagpo-provide niyan. Pagka may pondo pa ang barangay, barangay nagpo-provide niyan. Pagka kadalasan naman ang city at municipality. Pagdating ng cash o yung ayuda, national na ang gumagawa niyan. Kaya ngayon, ayun na nga yung gagawin natin ngayon. Dapat itutok lamang doon sa talagang naka-lockdown. Hindi yung dapat napakainin natin yung buong Metro Manila at na hindi naman talaga mataas ang COVID-19 o yung positive doon sa kanilang area.
Okay.
So ganito yung pagkakaiba ng granular lockdown. Ito na nga yung noon pa namin minumungkahi na para tutukan lang natin kung saan yung area na mataas ang mga positive dun sa lugar na yon. At yung iba naman ay pwede na natin na luwagan ng konti para naman gumalaw ang ekonomiya.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Interior Undersecretary Martin Dino. Daily COVID caseloads have not seen a dip below 5 digits for more than 2 weeks straight now. Tonight's big number is 17,447. This is the new cases tallied today, the second biggest case count since the pandemic began. Positivity rate has gone up to 26% as more tests were conducted, over 70,000 for the day to be exact. This brings the country's total COVID cases to more than 1.9 million. Deaths continue due to the virus also rising with an average of 106 per day, inching closer to the spike seen back in April at 135.
These are the other big stories tonight. Health workers across the country threatened to stage a protest after August 31 should the health department fail to release all of their benefits. Death toll from the powerful suicide bomb attacks at the Kabul International Airport have now reached more than 100. The U.S. vows to strike back. And not a good end to Gerald Mangliwan's bid for a medal in the 400-meter event in athletics. The wheelchair racer was disqualified after ending 5th in the race. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. Health workers are giving the DOH an ultimatum over the release of their benefits, some even dating back to 2020.
If the DOH fails to meet their demands, we may see our medical frontliners hitting the streets instead. Greg Gregorio with the story.
The Alliance of Health Workers has been staging protests due to unpaid COVID-19 benefits. They are giving the health department until August 31 or else at least 2,000 of their members nationwide will hold different forms of strike.
Dahil matagal na tayong nananawagan na Gov't resign or Gov't out sa Department of Health.
Aside from the special risk allowance, Mendoza called on the DOH to release their meal subsidy, as well as their active hazard duty pay, dating back from December 2020 to June this year.
Sana marami pa sana na-encourage ng mga health workers na manatili dito sa ating bansa kung naibigay man ito.
Dr. Maricar Limpin of Philippine College of Physicians says healthcare workers shouldn't be begging for benefits in the first place. Limpin hopes the situation won't have to end in more protests. The DOH has downloaded additional 311 million pesos for the SRA of around 20,000 healthcare workers. When asked about the looming strike, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere has this to say.
Ginagawa po namin lahat ng aming makakaya para matugunan po natin ang kahilingan ng ating mga healthcare workers. Sana ang isipin na lang po natin lahat ngayon yung mga pasyente po na nangangailangan lahat ng serbisyo nating lahat.
Vergere noted that they have already requested an additional fund for the SRA of 17,000 more health workers. And the list will further expand as health facilities continue to submit the details of beneficiaries. The DOH is also now coordinating with lawmakers to cover healthcare workers without direct exposure to COVID-19 patients. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
And that is not the only thing the DOH has to address. Health Secretary Francisco Duque in today's Senate hearing says that it was his decision to transfer 42 billion pesos in funds to the Budget Department for the procurement of medical equipment. In today's Blue Ribbon Committee hearing, Duque told senators that he made this move based on the recommendation of the National Task Force. Lawmakers have been probing the DOH after the Commission on Audit flagged some 67 billion pesos in deficiencies in the handling of pandemic funds. But for President Duterte, these investigations will lead to nothing, something that senators did not take lightly.
Mr. President, konting respeto rin naman po. We respect you, I respect you. Kung ang Blue Ribbon ay pagbibintangan, alam po ninyo, ang Blue Ribbon ay tanging committee na talagang nakaakda para investigahin lahat yung katiwalian. Kung di ko gagawin ang trabaho, masama ako. Kung gagawin ko ang trabaho, mas masama ako.
It's already been 6 months since the country started its inoculation drive, but it's only next month that vaccinated Filipinos will get to receive digital vaccine certificates. Gerard De La Peña with the details.
This is how the country's digital vaccination certificates will look like. It carries the holder's personal information, the brand and lot number of the vaccine used, and the place and date of vaccination. Everything will pop up upon scanning this QR code. Most importantly, this certificate will be recognized abroad. It will be launched in September, but initially exclusive to Metro Manila residents and overseas Filipinos. The Information and Technology Department said it would take about 2 to 3 weeks before it can be rolled out nationwide.
Ang pinaka-critical na nakikita namin yung data readiness. Allow us to have adequate preparation for the kasi katuwang natin sila.
One consideration are far-flung areas with poor connection. But for some lawmakers, the DICT scramble is a bit too late.
Is why are we playing catch-up? Kung umpisa pa lang, alam naman natin parating na ang mga bakuna, why did we not prepare for this as early as last year? Been calling for DICT for a vaccination certificate or vaccination card.
The DICT said it first had to wait for a sizable part of the population to be vaccinated first.
Mas kailangan niya ng datos na may first dose, second dose, anong brand, kailan tinurok. So may mga dagdag na mga variances, no?
But a lawmaker questioned as to why a certificate is needed when yellow cards are being recognized in 196 countries.
If a yellow card is already recognized internationally, then bakit meron pang VaxCertPH? So is VaxCertPH a support to yellow card?
Habang ipinopropagate pa lang po ang paggamit sa ibang bansa, kailangan you have to recognize both. And I think the countries also recognize, so for now, dalawa muna.
As the implementation of digital vaccine certificates is still being ironed out, the Quarantine Bureau will provide express lanes for OFWs who wish to avail of yellow cards for deployment. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
As government scrambles for more money to fund its pandemic response, President Rodrigo Duterte is reversing his stance on gambling. He has reportedly lifted a 3-year ban on new casino licenses and even wants casinos in Boracay. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the story.
President Duterte has changed his tune about casinos on Boracay. In 2018, he shut down a plan by Macau's Galaxy Entertainment to build a $500 million casino resort on the island. But now, he says we need the money.
Patawarin na po ninyo ako for the contradiction. Ngayon po, wala tayong pera. Kung saan man tayo makakuha ng pera, kukunin ko. Kung dyan sa gambling, so be it.
Businesses in Boracay have been hit hard by the pandemic, with tourist arrivals still nowhere close to where they were before COVID-19. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat says they've been pushing for rules to be eased soon.
Kasi ang buong Aklan is MECQ. They've been asking for a different quarantine classification. Kung pwedeng iba sila from the whole of Aklan. So if you say, let's say, pumayag, but eventually hindi pa naman na-approve yung granular lockdown, at least pwedeng hindi nakasama yung Boracay.
It's not just Boracay casinos. PAGCOR has also confirmed that the 3-year-old moratorium on new casino licenses has been lifted, which means anyone can apply to build one anywhere in the Philippines. Amid falling revenues, the government is betting on online gaming in a big way.
We are relying mostly on our online operations, which is the POGO, the e-sabong, the online e-games, and the online e-bingo, and the junket and e-junket operations.
Duterte had famously begun his presidency declaring that he hated gambling and that he won't allow it during his term. After shutting down Boracay for 6 months for a cleanup, he said Boracay should remain casino-free.
Ngayon, kung nagkamali ako, tama yan, nagkamali ako. Kung wala akong isang salita dyan, tama yan, wala akong isang salita dyan.
I'm Pamela Vasquez and we are One News.
For the big story in sports, the Philippine Air Force hosted a special heroes welcome in honor of Olympic medalist Staff Sergeant Heidelin Diaz and Sergeant Yumir Marshall at the Villamor Air Base. Diaz and Marshall were honored for their exemplary achievements during the Tokyo Summer Games, winning the gold and bronze medal respectively. As such, the two Olympians were given a plaque of recognition and a Glock gun by the Air Force. The Air Force also donned the rank of Lieutenant Colonel to MVP Group Chairman Manny V. Panghilinan. The MVP Group signed a deed of donation for the MVP Cybersecurity Center for Excellence with the PAF.
We cannot stress enough the importance of cybersecurity protection for the Air Force and generally for the armed forces. If there is ever any war, the first attack would be a cyber attack, to blind you and to blind the defenses of the enemy.
One of the most iconic voices in Philippine esports passed away this morning. Aldrin Paulo Pangan, popularly known as Kuya Duno in the gaming scene, passed away due to COVID complications. Pangan was the other half behind the iconic Lakad Matatag line. Tributes poured in for Pangan, who is remembered by the esports community for being true to his craft and a great friend to all. Time for another quick break. When we return. Death toll in the bomb attacks in Kabul have reached more than 100. The U.S. wants to retaliate. And not the best ending for wheelchair racer Gerald Mangliwan's Olympic bid as he was disqualified for lane infringement. The details after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Another lawyer had been gunned down in Cebu with the crime taking place in broad daylight.
Lawyers groups are demanding immediate investigation on the matter. This is now the 64th killing of a legal professional under President Duterte's term. Jem Avancenia with this report.
In the CCTV footage, a man wearing a red jacket is seen crossing the street and approaching a moving car. He then pulls out a gun and fires multiple shots toward the passenger seat. The unidentified gunman immediately flees the scene with a motorcycle rider waiting for him a few meters away. The man on the passenger seat has been identified as human rights lawyer Rex Fernandez. He was declared dead on the spot. Fernandez's driver sustained a gunshot wound and was rushed to the hospital.
Nato ang suspect motorizing in tandem. Doon ang gi-requesta ng kuan ang ato ang crime lab for autopsy. Accordingly, ang sabi ng kuan investigator mako, medyo pata lang kuan gagawin sa kuan. Dito ka confirm but ang recover na to nga official 5 or 6.
Before the incident, Fernandez staged a hunger strike against the condominium where he resides. He was also known to represent activists in various cases. The Integrated Bar of the Philippines has condemned the killing as it urged authorities to immediately conduct an investigation. The IBP in Cebu vowed to coordinate with the proper authorities on the probe. The National Union of People's Lawyers also lamented the fall of another colleague. NUPL recalled that Fernandez criticized the Duterte administration, which the late lawyer had hoped would bring change to the country. For its part, Supreme Court's Committee on Human Rights asked authorities to send them their findings before the end of September so that they could report and recommend appropriate actions to the court en banc. The Cebu PNP has formed a special investigation task group to probe the killing of Attorney Fernandez. The Justice Department has also directed the NBI to investigate the crime and file the appropriate charges. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
The U.S. and Afghanistan are mourning the deaths of at least 100 individuals who lost their lives to twin suicide bombings near Kabul airport. The U.S. military, however, is bracing for more attacks. Arian Kalumbiran with the details.
This ditch near Kabul airport has turned red. Its water is soaked with the blood of corpses, all fatalities from at least 2 powerful suicide bombings outside the gateway. The attack killed at least 103 people, including no less than a dozen American troops. Scores of wounded civilians were also rushed to hospitals. Islamic State Khorasan has claimed responsibility for the attack.
We believe it is their desire to continue those attacks, and we expect those attacks to continue. And we're doing everything we can to be prepared for those attacks.
A day before the bombings, the U.S. government and its allies have urged Afghans not to go to the airport due to threats of an attack. Over the past few weeks, thousands have been flocking the Kabul airport in the hopes of fleeing the Taliban, which regained control of the nation. An emotional U.S. President Joe Biden promised to hunt down the perpetrators. He says the Pentagon is planning to strike back.
For those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make
a casualty in the airport attack. 185 overseas Filipinos have so far been taken out of Afghanistan. Arian Kalumbiran, we are One News.
Another big story in sports. Filipino wheelchair racer Gerald Mangliwan misses a podium finish in the men's 400-meter T52 race after being disqualified in the final.
A 70-year-old single parent, Adonis Buemia, had been delivering ice for the past 30 years, earning 300 pesos daily. With that, he was able to fund the education of his child with special needs, their house, and a tricycle. And yet, he was still able to store 100 pesos in his cabinet every single day. But termites infested his hard-earned money. A desperate Adonis sought the help of a local TV program which referred him to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The BSP then endorsed his case to the nearest local bank and had his entire mutilated cash replaced. The chief regulator urged the public to deposit their money to approved financial institutions for safety and security.
Naalala ko tuloy, partner, yung mga alkansya ko na hindi ko pa na bubuksan since grade school. Meron pa akong 20 pesos doon. Ngayon, coin na siya ngayon.
Basagin mo na yan. Pero seriously, kudos to BSP, kudos to that bank. Pinapakita nila na hindi lang sila pako, tao rin, may puso pa rin.
Tama. Tapos binilang ko yan kanina, 70,000 divided by 100, 700. So, 2 years! Grabe ang galing ni, ni tatay, mag-save at sana matuto rin tayo mula sa kanya. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
At ako naman si Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good weekend.